You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Canon Fodder. Here are your hosts, Mark Mulcaster, Brian Cameron, Matt Booker, and Mark Newbold.
Grab your bookmarks, it's time to take cover as we unleash the Canon Fodder over the Star Wars galaxy of literature. Canon Fodder is the home on Fantha Tracks Radio for everything Star Wars literature, from comics, books, magazines and partworks. We delve below the depths of the covers of what is new in Star Wars literature, analyse it and give it our honest assessment. We cast our eyes to the future and see what releases we can't wait to read, look back at classic releases, meet and talk with the talent creating the content, as well as discuss the latest literature news. On this special edition of Canon Fodder, we're at New York Comic Con 2022 for the Star Wars Stories from a Galaxy Far, Far Away panel. Lucasfilm creative director Michael Siglain introduced authors Krisin Baver, Adam Christopher, Mark Guggenheim, Ethan Sachs, Cavan Scott, George Mann and Delilah Dawson onto the stage in room 406.2 at 10:30am on Saturday the 9th of October to look at the forthcoming releases from Del Rey, Disney, Marvel and much more. Matt Booker and Mark Newbold were there to cover it for Fantha Tracks, a panel you can hear right now here on Canon Fodder.
Good morning, Comic-Con. Everybody's having a good show so far. My name is Michael Siglain. I'm the creative director of publishing for Lucasfilm, and thrilled to welcome you and our fine, fabulous contestants here. Oh yes, to our Lucasfilm publishing panel. So first up, let me introduce these amazing authors. We have Krisin Baver. We're going to start with just a little bit of Q&A so that the folks in the audience can get to know you and your love of Star Wars and you came to Star Wars. So let's start with that first, right? How did you come to Star Wars? What's your first Star Wars memory? We'll start with Krisin on the end there.
Again, for having to be for her last name. I came to Star Wars probably like many of you. I was a kid. I discovered it, I think when it was playing on the Sci-Fi Channel, actually. And it was around the time of the special edition, so I just lucked into discovering it right when the toys were all coming back, and there was just so many ways to enjoy Star Wars and to really feed into that obsession that it quickly became. I was literally a card-carrying member of the Star Wars fan club. I had it in my little wallet, as if someone was going to ask me to see it. I had it ready just in case.
Yeah, I can legitimately say that the first movie I ever saw was Star Wars, the original, but it was 1978, and I'm from New Zealand, and in those days, movies, unlike today, they kind of came and went for schedules. So I tracked it down to August 1978. I was 6 months old, and my dad was like a super sci-fi fan and was determined to see this movie. So foolishly took a 6-month-old baby to see Star Wars. I always had to apologize if anyone was in the Newland cinema in August 1978. I'm very sorry for what I may or may not have done. But yeah, so and since then, Star Wars has been in my life. And it's thanks to my dad again. Like, he worked in advertising, and he used to take work trips from New Zealand to like Taiwan and Japan and bring back toys that you couldn't get in New Zealand. I mean, New Zealand's not that far away, but like in those days it was kind of sketchy. And I was like the envy of the playground with my 8080 and my snow speeder. And I just had wonderful memories of like, come back with suitcases full of stuff and like, just throw all the clothes out and underneath would be like the X-Wing or all these action figures that I'd never seen before. So yeah, like it's been kind of to me forever.
Yes, it's always been there for you. You never knew life without.
It's like literally, yeah, like 6 months old, and like this is Star Wars. This is my life.
Well, see, same story for me, except, you know, like Adam said, the movies came and went. You couldn't just go rent one even at that time. VHS players didn't exist unless it was like in the theater or on TV on Sunday at 3 o'clock with the Time to Make the Donuts commercials. You didn't see the movies. So Star Wars was this omnipresent thing where I had the Star Wars sheets. I had the read-along books where R2-D2 would tell me to turn my cassette over. I had my color forms with the Ewoks, and then the Battle for Endor was the first thing I was allowed to stay up late and watch on TV. And I was just like riveted, because you're just like, okay, so this is about a little girl who crash lands on a planet, becomes a hero, and makes friends with giant murder bears. I'm in forever. And then Return of the Jedi was the first one I think I was actually able to see in the theater through no fault of my own. But I do remember one of my strongest Star Wars memories was my cousin came to my house. And he was, you know, as cousins do when you have a bed and you have to share with your whole family in a small house. He was sleeping in my bed when we were like, 4 or 5, we were tiny. And he threw up on my Luke Skywalker sheets. And I was like, you're dead to me.
I'm also a card-carrying member of the Star Wars fan club. I still have some of my original Fantha Tracks newsletters. My way into Star Wars was actually through a movie called The Bad News Bears, which is this really awful movie starring a bunch of kids who are just horrible baseball players. And that's what I thought I was going to go see on this Sunday morning in May. And I was waiting online for it with my dad. My dad took me, and I was just like, why am I waiting online for this movie? And the 20th Century Fox logo comes up, and then suddenly I'm hit by this John Williams score, and I suddenly realize that I'm not watching The Bad News Bears. And then once the Star Destroyer flies overhead, I was in. I viscerally remember that moment. I viscerally remember where in the theater I was sitting, and it literally changed my life. I knew at that moment it was a life-changing moment at the tender age of 6.
Now I know why I love you so much, because I have an almost identical entry into this franchise. I was 4 years old in the summer of 1977, and one of my first memories, if not my first memory, is being in that theater when the fanfare hits, when the Star Destroyer passes overhead. And it's so vivid that my father, who passed away in 1995, is like, he's still there. And I've told this story. My previous career was as an entertainment journalist, and I got to interview Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, and George Lucas, and I told them all that story. I even had my one remaining original action figure. Remember it? Because my mom had sold the rest at the yard sale. My sister's little. So I showed them this action figure, and George Lucas was very, very uncomfortable.
I grew up with Star Wars in the house. My dad's a huge fan. So, I mean, from very early on, I remember just all Star Wars all the time. I remember distinctly wanting to eat a Tauntaun. I was like 4, and I was like, this is what I want. I want to eat this thing. Well, now you know more about me than you did, right? But I think my first real personal Star Wars memory, though, is episode 1. I was like, I want to be a pod racer more than anything in the world. I was a kid. I was like, oh my god, another kid. This is perfect. This is my career path set. My mom was like, no, absolutely not. So I didn't become a pod racer, but missed opportunities, I guess.
Mine is similar to you guys, right? Like I saw it in the theaters originally when it came out, because I'm old. And but first, when I was really young, my uncle used to have the Super 8, and the Super 8 projector is a really condensed version of the film. So when I saw it at 3 years old on the big screen, I kept saying to him, elbowing him, saying, "I want to see Han Solo. Where's Han Solo?" Because he comes, the film is 45 minutes before you see Han Solo. Super 8 was like 2. And it seemed like forever to me, because I didn't understand how long the movie was. And it was just like waiting and waiting. They're walking through the desert still? Come on, get to the cantina. But the same way, right? It's always sort of like you, Adam. It's just always been there, right? It's like I don't remember life pre-Star Wars. And that goes for the books too, right? And just like you can say, I remember seeing the film for the first time, whether it's Super 8 or on the big screen or VHS, or Sci-Fi Channel. I remember the first Star Wars books I had. You know, there was an 8x8 kids storybook called The Maverick Moon, now 1979. And my dad would read that to me and my sister at bedtime every night. He would change the ending every night, and we would be hysterical because he would just change it to something completely ridiculous every night, and we just wanted to hear it over and over again. Or Star Wars #4 from Marvel. First comic I ever bought or I ever had, was bought for me, was that one. How about you guys? Do you remember what your first Star Wars book or comic was?
Oh my god, I've been trying to buy this for ages. I do not remember what it's called, but I had this book, I want to say it was for maybe middle grade kids, maybe a little bit older. It was Obi-Wan and Anakin, and they're going on adventures. It was a chapter book. I don't remember what it was called, but the scenes are vividly imprinted in my head. Yeah. Oh man, that's so good. I'm sorry, I can't recommend it. I don't remember what it is.
For me, it was the original Marvel run on Star Wars. I got the first issue, but months after it came out, and it was a very used copy. I don't even think it had a cover, if I remember. So to this day, I mean, I do know what the cover looks like now. It's kind of iconic, but it took me a few years to figure it out.
Ethan and I were like separated birth, but we're just gonna tell the same stories. My first exposure was during the Marvel run. They released the first 3 issues in this plastic poly bag, and so I reread those. Basically, it was a 6-issue adaptation of New Hope, and I read the first half a million times because they didn't have the other half. But then eventually, they ran out of, story from the original Star Wars, so they started publishing with issue 7, brand new adventures from a galaxy far, far away. And that just blew my mind, the idea that you could actually continue the story and meet new characters and go to new places outside of the confines of that original 2-hour movie was, by this point I was like, 7, and it was mind-blowing. It still is. And my first exposure to the novels was in 5th grade. A teacher gave me his dog-eared, very beaten-up copy of Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which was unbelievable. Still, by the way, if you haven't read it, it's a wonderful Star Wars tale. There's some inappropriate now romantic tension between Luke and Leia that hasn't aged well, but apart from that, it's really good.
I mean, my first one was the little book that was paperback, and you turn the page and it came with the cassette tape, which, it's like you wear it down until the book is like the staples are falling apart. But I can tell you that one of the most meaningful ones was after both of my kids were born, I got back into books in a way that I hadn't since middle school. It's like in high school I was working too hard to read for pleasure, and in college I was too depressed to read for pleasure, and then I had kids. And after the kids I was like, okay, I'm gonna read everything I've missed. And so I would go to the used bookstore and just pick up every old, Jedi Academy book. Like I got into those Solo Kids, and I was reading. And so my kids are being watched in the LA Fitness kids room, and I'm on the treadmill, getting back in shape, and I'm going. Bob Salvatore's a great writer. And then somebody killed Chewbacca, and I'm on the treadmill, and I'm so surprised I trip, fall, face plant, and zip off the back of it. And everybody's running over, they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm emotionally destroyed." So of course, years later, I meet Bob, and I'm like, "Bob, you almost killed me with it." And he's just like, "Sorry." That's my most meaningful one.
Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, a Star Wars fan, Fantha Tracks fan.
My first one was also Splinter of the Mind's Eye, because again, my dad, he had a collection of science fiction books. It's all Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke and stuff, and there's this little paperback, like stuck between 2 massive volumes of Dune. For some reason, it was alphabetical, and it was Splinter of the Mind's Eye, and this is like some of us on this panel are old, and this is in the days even before the VHS releases. I saw the movies, I had a vague memory, and I would just read that book. And the other one, and again, this is like, how do you re-experience these movies that you can't go and see? There was a Return of the Jedi photo novel, like it was a huge square thing with lots of stills from the movie, and it had a cassette, like an abridged soundtrack with narration. Maybe it was 2 cassettes, like the whole thing was like, "Please turn over now." And again, like I don't know how many times like whenever I watch Return of the Jedi, I know all the breaks and the bit where the narrator is meant to come in and like, oh, please turn the cassette over. But yeah, that was the only way we could experience these things again, like in the old days.
In the slightly less old days. I think the first book that was actually purchased for me was actually the novelization of the films, which I thought was wild that I could just spend even more time re-exploring this trilogy in a different way and see a slight variation on it and a little more depth to the characters and what they were thinking and feeling. But very similarly to some other folks on this panel, my parents are huge sci-fi people, and they really got me into it. And I made a similar discovery on a bookcase where they had Splinter of the Mind's Eye. They had quite a collection, and I seem to remember when I found it, I felt kind of like they had been keeping this from me, that there's Star Wars books, and there's more to enjoy. But I think they legitimately forgot that they had it. I think they had purchased it probably in 1978 when it came out around, and read it once and forgot about it. It is a fascinating entry point for Star Wars publishing lore in the Legends canon now. I reread it a few years ago, actually, and some of it holds up really well, but to the earlier points, some of it is a little, just gonna make noise. But not a book, but I distinctly remember in a variation of the theme. One other thing my parents had was a record collection, and they had the soundtrack on LP. And if you've ever seen this, if you've had this, it was a beautiful gatefold, and it had Darth Vader on the back cover, which I would hide because I thought he was a little scary. And then I would open it, and there's all of these pictures from A New Hope. And when you're a little kid, whether you can read or not, if you're looking at that, you know the story so well. I distinctly remember opening that and sort of telling myself the story and going through it and just looking at the pictures and like thinking through the story, which is odd to me now, but it's sort of like pre-reading for a story that you know so well that you don't need the words, you can hear it, you can imagine it, and just a really interesting exercise for a little kid to just be sitting with this LP thinking about the Star Wars story.
That's awesome. And it is true though, right? Because it becomes so ingrained, right? And for many of us, before DVD, Blu-ray, etc., this is what we had, right? And to now be on the flip side of that and say, okay, now we can expand these stories, right? Adam, for you really got to expand some of these stories and take these characters and run with them with Shadow of the Sith. Can you tell folks a little bit about that title and what that one is?
So Shadow of the Sith is the story of Luke and Lando hunting Ochi Bestoon, who is hunting Rey's parents. It's from the line in The Rise of Skywalker where Rey meets Lando, and Lando is like, oh yeah, me and Luke had this adventure, and there's the hologram of Ochi's face. To think that I could write that story, like when I saw The Rise of Skywalker, this was way before the book, I remember that, I was thinking, Luke and Lando, how can they, Luke and Lando were on this thing? What were they doing? That's the great thing about Star Wars, for me, is that in every movie and whatever, there's characters in the background, and there's threads and seeds of other stories that kind of fired my imagination as a kid. And then here I am as an adult going, oh, Luke and Lando. And then when I got the call to do the book, I was like, oh, I get to tell that story. Never in a million years did I think I'd write a Luke Skywalker and Lando Calrissian novel. But it turned out okay.
More than okay.
It's funny. It was the standard kind of thing. It was like, oh yeah, 90,000 words. Go into the book, and then 3 weeks before it was due, I emailed my editor Elizabeth, and I was like, it's a little bit longer than you were expecting. And she's like, no, that's fine. So I sent it in, and 90,000 words became 160,000 words. So she was like, okay, I'm going to do a bit more time to read this. But yeah, I loved the idea of it's I consider it to be a main sequence story. I was writing episode 6.5, I thought, because it's right in the middle of Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, huge area of the mythos that we haven't explored very much. So like, it's both freeing because I could just create anything I wanted, but also kind of terrifying because it's like, well, this is uncharted territory. What do I do? So I thought, okay, I'm just going to write the movie in my mind. What would it be? What would I want as a Star Wars fan if I was reading a Luke Skywalker book? And like, I knew people are going to like, oh, Star Wars, oh, there's Luke Skywalker on the cover. There's an expectation that comes with that, even for me as a fan. So I kind of did my best to craft an adventure. Because I think, it's quite dark. It deals with a lot of kind of deep Sith lore and the kind of mystical, almost like dark fantasy side of Sith lore, which is really fun. It's also got speedrun chases and explosions and, thrill and peril. But it was a lot of fun to write, and I'm like, again, it's like, I got to name Rey's parents. There's so much I could do that I was like, had to pinch myself. Because you do the job, you focus on the job, write the book, and it's like, oh, I just named Rey's parents. Like, that's just a thing. That's the thing you do. It's like, yeah. And I did. And then when it came out, I was checking Wikipedia every day just to see who was updating articles. Like, come on, there's some characters here. It's like, it was fun. I feel very privileged to have been able to do a story that's like that important within the main sequence of the Skywalker saga.
I think people don't realize just how much creative freedom folks have when they are writing. Like your example about Rey's parents, you would think, oh, well, this had to have been established years ago and da-da-da-da, but no, it's like, we want everyone to bring each of your personalities, into these stories, right? We want you to bring your talents here, and we want you to have as much creative freedom as possible. And that's fun. We've taken all of those now, all of those stories, whether it's film, TV, etc., and we put them into one book that give each of folks to understand where everything falls on the timeline. Krisin, can you talk a little bit about what went into timelines? Because this is an incredibly ambitious book.
It is so ambitious, so it was a bit daunting at the outset. What went into it was about 40,000 spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Just spreadsheets upon spreadsheets. So this is a team book. It's myself, Jason Fry, Cole Horton, Amy Rakow, and newcomer Clayton Sandell writing it. I firmly believe if one person had been tasked with writing this, we might see it in about 10 years. It was such an undertaking. But also so much fun, because I think this is one of those books that, as we were starting the process, we were thinking, I can't believe this book doesn't exist.
Yeah.
This is going to be such an essential book for just placing things and understanding how stories intersect and how different books and comics and video games slot into other stories that we know. So on one hand, we thought, wow, I can't believe this doesn't exist anymore. And then we started writing, and then we thought, oh, right, because it's a huge undertaking. But also just such a joy, and I can't wait to see it finished, because just, those 40,000 spreadsheets I mentioned, just getting from that point of the process to really trying to understand the breakdown of events and where things slot in, to seeing those spreads after our designer got a hold of it.
We have an example as well.
Yes.
Can I just ask, for Christmas, will you send one of these to every Star Wars writer with a card that just says you're welcome?
Yeah, I got it. Everyone's on the list. It's in our life. Exactly. Yeah, you can see how detailed it is, because we really do try to cover, as much as we can at the time of production, right? And like Krisin said, it is a team of folks on the editorial side, on the author side, on the story group side, to put everything together so that it does make sense from A to Z.
It truly takes a village on every book, I firmly believe. But this one maybe took a small city in terms of all of that coordination, and we were having just the most interesting, deeply nerdy conversations in the background, trying to figure out certain points that weren't terribly clear or just hadn't been spelled out yet, and really just trying to make sure that we were doing to the best of our ability, slotting it in, and also not, the other, I think, interesting part of doing this is if it wasn't spelled out already, you also didn't want to slot something in very specifically at a point in time that would cut off potential future stories that we may not know, they haven't been told yet, but they might slot into the timeline elsewhere. So you want it to make sense, you want it to flow, but you never want it to keep someone from being able to tell a story if they come up with a really fantastic idea for a year that doesn't have a whole lot going on in it. 34 ABY has all the things already. It is so chock full of things. We've got so many spreads on that, I think we're good.
And this isn't your only title coming up. You also have Hard Objects, which you can talk to folks a little bit about.
Yes, I'm so excited for Timelines, but as excited as I am for Timelines, I am I have no words for Objects. And part of this is because Objects is just so close to my heart. It's a book that I really wanted to write after, so I'm going to tell you a little backstory. In 2020, while we were all dealing with the 2020-ness of it all, I had the chance to write a book called Skywalker: Family at War, which is a biography of the Skywalker family. And I loved writing this book. I hope when people read it, they have as much joy as I had creating it, because I just had the best time working on that book. But we have deadlines, and eventually we have to meet those deadlines. Time moves forward, marches on. I turned in the manuscript, and I was just simply not ready to leave that headspace. For those of you who haven't read it, who don't know, it's written as if the Skywalker family is a real dynasty, legacy family. It's written almost as if they're kind of like the royals. So we all know of them. They have their fingers in all kinds of major galactic events. And so it's written from the perspective that Star Wars is real. And so, of course, I don't want to leave that space. I don't want to leave that headspace. So this book grew out of that idea that if Star Wars is real, what if we thought about all of those pieces that make Star Wars so fascinating, the props. And what if we created this collection of illustrating the Star Wars story through those items? It's a little bit like a museum of the mind, I keep saying, where I was thinking of it as if, as I'm writing it, I'm walking through this collection. But of course, some of those objects couldn't all necessarily be together in a museum collection.
Well, we have one of those objects.
Yes. Oh, I love this one. So this is Yoda's Blistle? Yeah, I'm pronouncing it right. I can spell it, I can't say it. And this illustrates a really interesting part of the book in terms of when you're picking 100 objects at the outset, that seems like so many things. You have so many things you can put on that list. And there's the essential items. There's the Darth Vader helmets. There's the Skywalker lightsaber. There's the things that if they weren't in here, you'd feel a little bit like that it must be in there. However, as I was writing the book, as I was writing these essays, I realized that each essay and each object also was telling a story that might be a different facet of a different character. And so when we got to Yoda, I knew I wanted a Yoda object, but then I didn't want an obvious Yoda object. The first thing that came to mind was his cane. And that illustrates a certain part of Yoda's life, but I thought, no, that's a little too obvious. It's a little too obvious. And I thought Yoda's lightsaber, but as you might imagine, there are a few other lightsabers in here, and it's not Star Wars 100 lightsabers. So then I had to keep moving on from that, and I thought, what about Yoda's little flute? I wonder if we can use his little flute, which I adore, because I think it's not necessarily the first thing you think of with Yoda, but as I was writing the essay, it allowed us to explore the playfulness of Yoda a little bit, and also a side of Yoda that I don't think we always think about, which is, what was he doing on Dagobah for all those years? He can't just be meditating or, making root leaf stew. He's having some fun. He's playing some music.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
Delilah, I want to talk to you a little bit. You are known for writing some villainous characters.
A little bit.
A little bit. Some badass characters. Some dark characters.
That's true.
Can you share what you're working on now?
So, yeah, I've gotten to cover some very fun female villains, including Phasma and his slash Ventress. And we realized that we've recently seen some very cool new female characters in a TV show in an area that we haven't really explored a lot in the books. And so now we get to talk about a female. Brady's gonna bite me, I'm scared now.
No, go for it.
Inquisitor.
Should we do a cover reveal?
I think you should show them.
Sure.
And I can find the breed.
What can you tell us about Rise of the Red Blade?
Let me tell you officially here what we have about Rise of the Red Blade, because then I know that we are safe to say that. Let's see, let me find it. I had it and then I got real excited about killing Chewbacca again. Yes. From the aftermath of Order 66 comes a new group of former Jedi, each with their own reason to serve the Empire under Darth Vader. Among them is Iskat, who survived the destruction of her old order to claim a new destiny in the Force. Handpicked by Emperor Palpatine himself for her brutal abilities, Iskat joins the Inquisitors in the hope of uncovering her hidden past that the Jedi refused to share with her.
Nice. Can you tell us anything else about her?
I can tell you that if you want to get just a little taste of what you might see in her, you'll want to look at some of Charles Soule's Vader comics. And you can catch a little glimpse of her and maybe a couple other characters that you might see in the book.
Just a little tease, we'll have more on this later in the year. Speaking of comics, we've got a bunch coming up from Marvel, and we have 3 of our authors here. So Alyssa, Ethan, and Mark, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in each of your titles right now?
Oh no, me first. Sorry, my voice is super busted, so I apologize if I sound terrible. But, so, Aphra. Right now, Aphra is neck deep in trouble with, as usual. She's neck deep in investigating firsthand the lore of the Ascendant, who are this, they're like a dark side tech cult, is what everyone thinks. But as we go forward in Dr. Aphra this year, we're going to learn more and more about the Ascendant, their secrets, and how they built and developed their greatest achievement, the Spark Eternal, which is supposed to simulate the Force and supposed to grant eternal life. I would say your mileage may vary on that last one, but the Spark is going to play a very important part in this upcoming arc, which I also pitched originally as the Fast and Furious X's. So. Yeah, so that's what's going on in Aphra, and things are getting spicy, so look forward to that.
I think one of the greatest things, if not my favorite part of writing in the galaxy of Star Wars, is that unlike any other major pop culture phenomenon, everything connects. Like, these are all threads that weave into this rich tapestry, and so we are telling these stories. Some of the characters in Bounty Hunters are characters that were on my bed sheets, as a 7-year-old, and that is just such an amazing part. So we're coming to a sort of crossroads with the book where there were sort of 2 stories. One where Valance, one of the main characters, was sort of unwillingly conscripted into the Empire, and there will be a very violent collision with Tanga's Bounty Hunters, which includes some of the aforementioned bounty hunters that were, from my childhood, so Bosk and Zuckuss and 4LOM, and so we're finally getting to this stage where they, of course, they can't seem to get along with anyone, and they especially can't get along with each other. So that's coming up, and what I'm especially excited about is we have some very great characters from the video games, and I don't know how much I can say since there was sort of a...
You can say.
Okay, well, It rhymes with Preferno Squad. So I didn't actually reveal it. Yeah, so it was sort of revealed on a cover recently, so I guess it's safe. But yeah, I'm very excited to play with those characters. And a shout out to Bria, a friend of mine, for helping me with getting into those characters.
What's going on with Han and Chewie?
Well, Han and Chewie are getting into all sorts of trouble. I killed off Han at the end of issue 5. Spoiler alert, he's probably not dead, probably not. But when I wrote the script, I said, yes, story group, we killed off Han. Just kidding. But basically, we just started the second of 2 arcs where Han obviously is not dead. Chewie is stuck on a prison planet. Eventually we're going to get the 2 scoundrels back together, and you're going to learn what is inside this urn that Han and Chewie have been after since the beginning of issue 1, sort of the MacGuffin of the series. Spoiler alert, it doesn't contain the ashes of one of Jabba's rivals the way Jabba said it did. It actually contains something else that ties in to, we're actually really with the comics playing a long game where everything not only connects to Star Wars, it also connects to sort of all the other Star Wars books. So, believe it or not, Han and Chewie, the series that you probably thought was, sort of unconnected to the rest of the line because it takes place in a different time period, actually completely connects up with the rest of the line because of what's in that urn. I'm not going to reveal that here, but what's really cool is you learn about it in Han and Chewie. You also learn about it in an upcoming book called Star Wars Revelations.
It's as if we planned.
And what's cool about Star Wars Revelations is it'll be out in November, and it'll tease. You may have heard of this thing called the Force, and as Yoda said, through the Force, things you will see, including the future and the past. So we're going to go to the past to see some future books like Yoda, and we're going to go to the future of books like the main Star Wars book, the flagship, and Darth Vader, and Bounty Hunters, and Dr. Aphra. And we will be teasing sort of an event that we haven't even announced yet, but something that's going to happen in 2023, you will get your first glimpse of in Revelations, kind of like the way the Star Wars Holiday Special, and I feel like the writing of Revelations is the Holiday Special.
This took an unexpected turn all of a sudden.
Much the same way, the Holiday Special was, a lot of our first introduction to Boba Fett. Revelations will be your first introduction to a variety of things that will be playing out in 2023.
Yeah, this is a very important title that does, like Mark said, connect to everything else that we're doing in 23 and actually beyond. We have some interior pages. I don't know if you can talk a little bit about this.
Okay, well these are from Salvador Larroca, who is an incredible artist. He's actually the artist of the original Kieran Gillen 25-issue Darth Vader run. So getting him back was absolutely terrific. And you'll sort of see, we first meet Vader in his back to tank on Mustafar. He has an interaction with the Eye of Webbish Bog, who is actually a character that was created for Rise of Skywalker and appears in the novelization, but was cut from the finished film. And the Eye is going to tell Vader and show Vader the future and the past. And that last panel that you see all the way to the right, that's the future of one of Padme's handmaids who's been running around with Darth in the Darth Vader book. So we're really not kidding around. We are showing some versions of the future that may not come to pass, but we're also planting some pretty deep flags. And judging from that last panel, I'd say they're pretty cool.
I can already feel the revisions, not the revisions, the updated version of Star Wars timelines in the future. The spreadsheets. I see them when I close my eyes.
I'll tell you something, just because Revelations was not hard enough to do because we're working with 5 different artists, all drawing moments from books that haven't even been drawn yet. And in the second draft, I decided to increase the degree of difficulty by actually, in the middle of the book, you flash forward to an event that happens in January, but you actually revisit it at the very end of Revelations because I wanted to show that the Eye's prophecies were actually starting to come true, even in the book that you're holding in hand. So it was the same moment revisited 3 different times by 3 different artists. I still can't believe it actually came together.
That's super cool. Let's talk about some of the other new books that we've got coming up. I believe these are all new reveals, so let's see what you guys can say. Alyssa, what can you tell us about After 29?
The boys are back. I'm so excited. After 29, we are going. So we're going on one of my favorite things, and also one of Afra's favorite things. We're going on a deep dive archaeological expedition. We are going to not only learn more about the Ascendant and their spooky tech, which you can see Afra's definitely wearing, and it's probably totally fine. We're going to go visit one of their abandoned temples and we're going to see some very, very spooky things. I think Afra and the Spark Eternal are, they're sort of in conversation right now. So we're going to be seeing things through Afra's eyes, we're going to be seeing things through the Spark's eyes, and we're going to get one more point of view that you probably aren't expecting. So I'm super excited about this.
Nice. Mark, how about Han and Chewie?
So this is the penultimate issue of the series. The cover's by Phil Noto, who's been doing the covers for the entire run. And as you can see from that cover, we're going to see the return of, the new characters that we introduced in the book. Marshal Buck Banco on the left there, and fellow scoundrel Keltana on the right. But if you look at the bottom right, that's the Sava Corin Curse from Charles Soule and Alex Maleev's Lando run. We brought in the Sava to basically tell us what exactly is in that urn. So this is actually a really important issue because we are, again, planting a lot of flags, doing some really big reveals, and it ends, as all the issues have been, on a pretty cool cliffhanger that sets up the 10th and final issue.
Thank you. I wanted to jump around to a couple other books that we've got coming up. First, Ethan, I'm sorry. Tell us about Magicus, please.
Yeah, it's amazing how this cover is kind of a spoiler. So what we have is obviously Valence's career in the Empire is not going so well at this point. So this trying very hard to think about what I can and can't say. I do also want to just give one quick shout out to Paolo Villanelli, the artist on this book, who is the all-star, the superstar, and who is actually in this building in Artist Alley, and he has for sale some of the original art from the series. Definitely worth your time and check it out. So this is kind of where this story starts to kind of come together. We've started planting some seeds earlier on, where Valence's Imperial squad kind of runs into Tonga, Bosk, the other bounty hunters. So it's kind of a fun issue. I don't want to spoil it too much.
Hello, Fantha Tracks. Fantha Tracks. Hi, Fantha Tracks.
So now we're going to just jump to some of the other titles that we've got coming up. So these are a few books coming out from Dark Horse in October and November. Creepy Cavan Scott returns for another Halloween tale with Tales from the Rancor Pit. Unfortunately, due to supply chain issues, this is now going to be a Thanksgiving tale, and that will now be out in November. There was nothing we could do about that, unfortunately, but Cav once again delivers, 3 creepy tales, very EC-like. And we're already working on next year's, which is very exciting. Obviously, we've got High Republic coming up from George Mann and Daniel as well. So some great stuff from Dark Horse. We spoke about Visions briefly at Celebration, but I wanted to bring it up again because this is an original manga that we're doing with Viz. It is a Visions original manga, which is very, very exciting. We can't reveal too much beyond this teaser image at the moment, but this book is going to be incredible. So look for this soon-ish. We do not want to rush anyone on this one because this one's really, really special. Wanted to also talk about a little bit of the books we've got coming out from Insight Editions. Particularly the book that Ashley and Kelly did, Star Wars Every Day, is it's really extraordinary. It really is a beautiful way to celebrate the franchise and the fandom on a daily basis, right? So everything from little meditations to things that you can do with your kids, to how to have a Star Wars movie night. Everything is in there. It's broken down throughout the year. It's really, really fun, and Ashley was incredible, as was Kelly. And I do have to just say that the Life Day pop-up book is just as adorable as it looks on screen there. But one of the titles I wanted to highlight up here was the High Republic one, Chronicles of the Jedi. So the cool thing about this one, this was written by Cole Horton, who was also one of Krisin's co-writers on Timelines. This is an in-world book about the Jedi of the High Republic, with all new illustrations. So we get some new art of Bell and Ember, which is just beautiful. We have a look at the Jedi Council from the light of the Jedi era, as well as some of the art of the Republic Fair and Imri and Vernestra. This book does not give anything away about the fate of any characters, so it will not spoil anything for anyone, but it does include information about Phase 2 and maybe even a teaser to Phase 3, which is exciting. So we've got that from Insight. Also from Insight, I'm really excited to announce a new title from them, which is the High Republic lightsaber collection. So they had a lightsaber book, a lightsaber collection book that they did a couple years ago, absolutely beautiful. This is a deep dive into all of these beautiful, ornate sabers from the High Republic. All 3 phases are included in this title. We're really, really happy about this one and very excited for this one. We've got one other big announcement to make today, and unfortunately she could not be here to make it because she had to leave, but we wanted to have Justina Ireland on the panel. 1, because she is awesome, 2, because she's doing incredible work in the High Republic, but 3 was to announce the Sana Staros miniseries. So unfortunately Justina couldn't be here to announce it, but we are really, really excited about this. This starts in February. I don't think we can tease too much of it. We showed a little bit about this. We've got this cover. We've got, I believe Ken is downstairs, but Ken Lashley just did a gorgeous variant cover for us. This is hot off the press. This was finished about 2 days ago. We also have a sneak peek at some interior art that, again, was also just finished. We're really, really excited about this book. We're really looking forward to it. Can't say enough good things. It'll be out in February. Alyssa, I don't know if there's anything you want to say about Sana for folks who might not really know.
Sana is super cool. She is, God, I don't know what to say about Sana. I mean, she's amazing. She is currently part of Afra's crew. She's also one of Afra's exes. She's sort of the level-headed, keep it together kind of person, and she's currently, she's currently leading the art that I'm writing with Afra. And you need to read this because I read some of it. I'm so excited, and it's so good. You need this, right now. I mean, it doesn't come out to February, but you need it right now.
And like Mark was saying before, everything matters and everything is connected. Right, so there are things that are going on in Afra that will relate to this, and then vice versa. And that's the beauty of everything that we've been doing lately is to layer in that interconnectivity and say, okay, well, how can we put this character here and this character there, and just really enrich it so that if you're reading one book, awesome, great. But if you're reading multiple, you're going to get the bigger picture just across the board. So that's where we are at with our Star Wars publishing. Before we wrap up for the day, I did want to ask just two more questions of the panelists. I asked this question yesterday with High Republic. So not counting the High Republic, which is the Star Wars character that you most relate to? Who wants to take that one first? Not Alyssa.
Well, let's go in the middle.
Okay. Mark, go for it.
You know, this is so cliche, but you caught me with a tough question. I gotta say it's Luke because writing Star Wars for me is a lot that ties back to, my first experience with Star Wars, which is I was sucked into this, I took my first step on this larger journey, and being able to now, contribute little pieces of lore to this huge tapestry, this wonderful canon, I kind of feel a little bit like, this farm boy who's been thrust into a much, much larger situation. So I'm sure, come find me later on the floor when I inevitably find out what I should have actually said in response to this.
I mean, I'd like to say that I'm diplomatic like Leia, or vicious and tenacious like Phasma, or clever and cunning like Vi. But if you actually get down to it, it's probably Cricky from Star Wars Black Spire Galaxy's Edge. She's just a little bat mechanic who just wants to be part of things and do her best and be really helpful. It's like, wait, I get to hang out with you guys? Oh my god, that's awesome. So I don't know, I like that sometimes the quiet characters, I think, probably represent me better than the really big, strong ones, although I would love to have a lightsaber.
Yeah, I agree. I'm actually going to pick one of my own sort of ones that I created for Shadow of the Sith. Similar theme. There's a character called Comet who lives on her own on a desolate planet where she has a life of isolation and basically staying out of people's way and making sure that people stay out of her way. And I've recently moved to the country from living in a town to the country where it's suddenly silent and peaceful and there's no people and cars, and I'm sort of I'm getting old as well, so as I get older, I'm appreciating Comet's kind of philosophy more and more.
I lobbed this into the middle, but it was coming back to me eventually. I know. I have a different answer to this every single day, and every time this has come up in the past, I think I've probably said something different. Today, I'm going to go with Rey, because I very much connect with her story of feeling a bit like no one from nowhere, don't worry about it, not important. In stepping into this larger world of Star Wars and Star Wars publishing, but also my day job at StarWars.com, and just all of the facets of, from the moment, and it keeps coming up as an anniversary in my phone, from the moment I had the chance to Google my name and Star Wars, and StarWars.com came up for the very first time, and I saw those two things slotted together. It felt a little bit surreal that I had the chance to contribute in any way to something that I loved so much. So I think that's a little bit of the Reyness. However, I'm going to say a second one, if I can have two.
Sure.
And the second one is a little bit of a gimme for some folks up here, specifically next to me, that I very much relate to KB68 from Shadow of the Sith. Very much, very closely relating to her.
I wonder why. I guess I'm a Jawa. I'm a horrible little trash animal from the desert, and yeah, I'm just here causing trouble all the time for everybody, and I would say I'm sorry, but I'm just delighted. So yeah, I'm definitely a Jawa.
It's such a good question, and I'm going to cut out all the characters that I write, just because I kind of feel like you have to get into their head as a writer, and that would be, so obviously they resonate with you as part of the task. When I was a kid, it was Wedge. I kind of felt if I was going to survive under those conditions, I too would leave the second my X-Wing got a little picked up. So I always related, because it was always nice to see him survive to the end of Return of the Jedi and party with the Ewoks by being a little bit more pragmatic than anyone else. Lately, yeah, because of Andor, I've rewatched Rogue One a lot recently, and Jyn Erso really resonates with me, and especially in these times, just sort of keeping your sense of self and your values under all these conditions that are beyond your control. And I get emotional every time her art plays out on the screen.
Awesome. Thank you.
Please don't blow up.
Last question for everyone. Obviously you guys are doing amazing work on the Star Wars side, but for folks out there, if they want to read more of your work, what else are you working on that they can find? Anyone, go for it.
I'll go. I'm doing some Doctor Who stuff. Doctor Who's been in my life as much as Star Wars has, really. So, never in a million years would the kind of 8-year-old who was playing with Star Wars action figures and watching and reading Doctor Who books think that 35 years later I'm doing this and I'm doing some Doctor Who work. Yeah.
Awesome.
After this, I believe we all go down to Hall A for an autograph session. Is that right, at 12? Don't we? But anyway, there's a Barnes & Noble down there by the autograph area, so if you like what we say, you might find our books there. My big one is called The Violence. It's got a really pretty cover with a knife on it. You can't miss it. It's bright red. But it's about, pandemic of random violence in which people beat each other to death at Thousand Island and Costco, and then a woman uses pro wrestling to escape domestic violence. So it's that kind of thing. And I write a bunch of kids' horror right now. I guess the pandemic starts horror. So I have books called Mine and Camp Scare that are, scaring your children.
I have a original graphic novel coming out in December called Too Dead to Die. It's sort of a it's an homage to James Bond. I say homage in the completely not violating any trademark or copyright way. But it's with Howard Chaykin. It's an absolutely gorgeous book, and I'm probably on Monday gonna turn in the screenplay to the producers who want it. So.
I'm doing a series for Marvel called Midnight Suns. The first issue came out. Hope you dig it. And I'm doing a non-fiction. I was a journalist in a former life, and I'm doing a non-fiction series that's running on NBC News right now called Climate Crisis Chronicles, and it will be collected from AWA Studios, and it will be collected in trade by the end of November. But it's real life people at the front, basically on the front lines of the battle against climate change. I thought it was pretty gripping stuff.
I just wrapped up a mini-series 5-issue run on Iron Fist, which is pretty sick. And my first issue of my brand new run of Deadpool with Martin Cucola comes out next month.
Krisin, anything else you want to tease or mention?
Is there another slide?
Oh,
okay, that felt like a tee-up. I bathe in Star Wars all the time. However, I'm super excited. Can I name a Star Wars one that we didn't mention yet? I can name a Star Wars one. It's a Star Wars panel. I'm talking myself into it. You're not talking me out of it. So,
I'm trying to figure out which one you're talking about.
Right? On November 8th, we have... It's okay.
Yeah,
it's an okay one. It's okay. The Art of Star Wars: The High Republic is about to drop. And I'm so excited for this one. I really expected this line to come up. I don't know why. Like my magic.
Hang on.
It has a beautiful cover. I'll talk very slowly and deliberately.
Oh, there we go.
But yes, it has a beautiful cover. Here it is in the corner, my baby. I'm so excited for this book. We talked a little bit about it on the panel yesterday, but it was such a dream to get to talk to all of the people making the High Republic and do a deep dive into the making of this initiative. It's a bit, it goes into the concept and design for sure, but it's a bit of a making of book in the way that we tell this story, and just such a delight to work on it, to get to go in deep with all of the artists and the creators and the story group members and
the authors, and of course Mike talking about all of these details of how do we get from, gee, we'd really love to do a new initiative that's multimedia and interconnected, and what could that be, to this. And I absolutely demanded that Yoda be on the cover. Like, I said it in a nice way, but they were like, oh, who do you think should be on the cover? And I was like, well, Yoda. And also Keith, because I love her. You know, and also Buryaga, because I love him. You know, it was a very long list. It was a very long list just of characters that I love, but I'm delighted by the cover. It has a foreword by Kathleen Kennedy, which I still cannot believe I get to say that sentence. It's pretty wild. And I'm just super delighted with how it turned out. It's a beautiful, beautiful book.
Yeah, no, you did an amazing job on it, and really, please give all of them a round of applause. We are doing this for you, so thank you. Have a great rest of the show. May the Force be with you.
Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Canon Fodder. For more Star Wars podcast content, be sure to subscribe to Fantha Tracks Radio on your podcatcher of choice. Subscribe to all our social media at links.fanthatracks.com. Be sure to be checking out fanthatracks.com daily for all your latest Star Wars news. And you can also join us live on YouTube for Good Morning Tatooine every Sunday evening at youtube.com/Fantha Tracks TV.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.